going to introduce the next speaker. Right, he's going to discuss, his topic is a day in the life of a global tax professional. His name is Mr. Mark Goulding, EY Tax Market Segment Leader for Southern Africa. Just a bit about Mark. Mark started his tax career as a corporate tax consultant and spent 12 years working in various roles, providing clients with corporate tax advisory and consulting services, including tax accounting and revenue audit support services. Prior to now, he was the Business Tax Services Africa leader, and for 5 years prior to that, he was responsible for all services provided by the Human Capital Group. He now plays the role of Tax Market Segment Leader for Southern Africa. Now, Mark has over 20 years of taxation experience in various auditing and consulting firms in South Africa, of which 14 have been with Ernst & Young. Please welcome nobody else than Mark Goulding.
Okay, thanks everyone. I've asked for the lights to stay on so that you can see each other and you can scribble down some notes. I'm going to spend most of the discussion standing here because I was standing at the back and it's quite difficult to see the guys standing down below. Not my normal style. I normally walk around a lot more, but guess this is what we'll do for this one. What I'm going to do with a colleague of mine who will come up and join me just now, one of my associate directors, Fidelis, we're going to talk to you about what it means to be a global tax professional, how it's changed in the 20 years that I've been doing tax. And in order to do this, I'm going to take you through a typical day. So I'll whip through a typical day, explain to you what myself, my senior managers, my associate directors would typically do. And then Fidelis will talk to you about some things that you can do in your career to make yourself an excellent tax professional. And he'll give you tips. These are tips we tell our staff. These are tips we train our staff on. And hopefully you find that very useful for yourselves for the rest of your career. Okay, let's just check that this one works. Okay, so we're going to take you through a day. Typical wake up, get out of bed. Typically, in South Africa, we've noticed we get up much earlier than everyone else. Our office will be running by 6:30 already. We'll have half the office in there by 6:30. That, I guess, to do with traffic. I was in Detroit. In October. Detroit is like 7-8 hours behind us. So I was having a call with South Africa in the afternoon. I got in there at 7 o'clock. I promise you I switched the lights on in Detroit. At 7:15, there was still nobody there. I turned the coffee machine on. At 7:30 of their time, I had to get on my call. There were still only like 3 people in the office. So the offices differ around the world a lot as to how they work. That wasn't even their winter yet. It was pretty cold, but it wasn't snowing yet in October. And so they're different styles. So we would be having half the office already in by 6:30. Guys tend to, come in on the train now, ease the commute, into the offices. So if you have a look at a typical day, we come in on the train. I would read and I would catch up on the various news on my iPad at the moment. I'd read the various papers. I'd read the various, news sites on it. Reading through a news site, you can see this is a real live picture of the 7th of February. A typical one that I would have read. This is not my client because I wouldn't stick my client's one up here. But you'd have a look through this, you'd skim through it, you'll see on the top corner it says New York. And I would scan through it of interest. If this was my client, we would tend to work on global, clients. Like this, you skim through it, and what does this thing tell you? If you have a look in the second column underneath the IBM logo, it ended last year with a tax provision of this and a tax rate of 15.6%. So this is in the US. They've got an effective corporate tax rate of 15.6%. How did they do that? They ran it through a unit in the Netherlands. So I'm reading this sort of stuff and I'm starting to think, uh-oh, if this is my client and this is the front page of Business Day, we got some problems coming here. Who can tell me why there would be problems coming here with an article like this? You can just shout it out. Tell me various problems that you see with an article like this for a tax advisor. Come on, Cleveland's looking for first place. This is like Tax 101. You guys should be able to get this one. So what you have on this sort of one, 15% tax rate, very low corporate tax rate. You have the revenue. Will be interested as to why the rate is so low. If you just take the South African standard rate of 28, why are these guys at 15? US rate is very similar. They would also be asking those sort of questions. The aid agencies would be saying multinational giant corporation, not paying its fair share of tax in the jurisdictions that it's working in. You've seen Google, you've seen Starbucks, you've seen all of those in the paper. This is now front page. So you've got to now take a position. What is your position going to be on this paper? So this is what you would have read through, seen these sort of things. We'd walk from that into a tax technical meeting. Typically, we will have technical meetings of about 100 hours a year. Groups get together, talk about technical issues. There would have been preparation. I try and read it 2 days before, but mostly I'm ending up doing my technical training, my technical preparation the day before, unless I've seen that it's a pack. If the guys organising the technical training have given out a big pack, then I would tend to have started it the week before. And then we'll debate the issues, we'll form certain views on things, we'll come up with ideas. This is the basics of what our clients buy from us. So we spend quite a bit of time investing in technical training, both with myself reading and then with my colleagues talking about it. We go into a client meeting. Typical client meeting would look very similar to this. 4 sort of people. I never go to a meeting alone, so I always have one of my colleagues with me. They either see a view that I haven't taken, or, in all honesty, if they were one of my senior managers, they would have done a whole lot of the work already, and I'm grooming them for their careers. I'll allow them to present to my clients. I'll allow them to, run the meetings, and every now and again, the client will look at me and I'll go, I agree, and I'll let my senior manager, run with it. So this is a typical type of setup for a meeting that we'd have. These would tend to last anywhere between 1 to 2.5 hours, client meetings. They don't really I can't get through a client meeting shorter than, than an hour. And by 2.5 hours, I'm done. So those tend to be the length of time of client meetings. This is just an example of a typical, building around the globe. All of the big accounting firms will have these sort of buildings. This is our Joburg office, as an example. They're high-tech, modern, new offices, tend to be glass buildings, lots of meeting rooms, lots of VC rooms, and you need that to be a global tax professional. You've got to be able to connect. You'll have Wi-Fi across the buildings. You would walk around with your computers to any floor, into any meeting rooms with it. Most of our senior managers and above have EY phones. I have a computer and I have an iPad and I have a BlackBerry, and my mails comes through to all of those, and I read and respond to them. And we do that because at night the US wakes up and I'll start getting mails and things through at night. And in the morning I have the East open. So I tend to have moved my clients to the US side. I don't have too many from China. So I do most of my calls from 4 in the afternoon until about 7. That's when the US calls happen for me. Quite a lot of them, out of interest sake, I'll do in a car. If I'm not on the train, I'll be in the car, and then off the Bluetooth, I'll go onto a global conference call and talk about the issues on the global conference call like that. This is just a map of an EY footprint across Africa. These are my offices across Africa. This is our area that we work with. When I do tax planning for my clients, we do tax planning in Africa. All the yellow blocks are where we have countries and we'd operate from. And you will see one of the meetings that I then do where we specifically talk around a multinational operating model. For that Africa, so the next meeting I'll go to after the technical meeting, the client meeting, we'll go and plan some of our events. I'm a markets leader. We run market events, we run client events, and this would be an example of a conference like you've got here. We would go into a planning session for a conference like this. We've gone to numerous places across Africa, and last year we were in the Sandton Convention Centre. And this year we'll probably have an Africa conference in our Johannesburg office. I then go into a learning week. We do learning and training of our staff across Africa, and we do setting up of that. Large portions of the learning and training comes through from the team that is sitting at the back. This is an example of a learning week. We've moved 2 groups of about 200 of our staff across Africa together. This was at Legends north of Pretoria. We fly the guys in from across Africa, and they all come and learn a very similar curriculum that EY then trains for a week. Here are just some snapshot pictures of what that looks like. That takes an immense amount of planning. Luckily, I'm not involved in too much of that planning. As I say, we've got a big team that runs that. I really just have to bring in some clients. We bring in some clients to talk to them. I came and talk to the clients. We tend to hold a leadership meeting at the same time, and I sit on the tax leadership team. And then we come and meet, all of our staff across Africa. So we would be doing some planning for that event. I then we get involved in some recruitment, particularly on some of our more senior recruitment. Anybody from probably senior manager and above. I'd have oversight into the managers, but anyone from senior manager and above, I really want to meet, and talk to and interview myself if they're in our areas that we're working on. All the partners will meet any senior manager and above and actually do interviews with them. I'll always try and have lunch with my team if I can, somebody in my team, either one-on-one or in little groups. That's when I get a chance to joke and laugh and just have a little bit of a break with them, hear what's happening on their day. I really enjoy the people element of it. Into the afternoon, we'll run through tax technology. Tax technology is a big issue, for a global firm. If you want to be seeing what's happening from your clients' tax affairs across the globe, you can't do it, manually. You need to use technology. Here's just a snapshot of some technology we would use to track the submission of returns across the globe. And we would spend time obviously finding updates of that technology, getting reports out of it, talking to our clients about that. And this is an example of an integrated Pan-African working model that we'd have the different teams that work into there, who they report into, and we'd get onto, in the afternoon, I'd get onto those calls. We'd start going onto calls Pan-Africa, start going onto video conferences across Pan-Africa, into Europe, and into the Americas. Some of it tax planning, ideas that we would talk about, some of it tax minimization, updates on what the revenue officials are doing. Just examples of ideas of the video conference rooms and how they look at. We've used all of these. I've sat on my computer for a 6-hour video conference into London, because they said to me, would I fly into London for a one-day meeting? I said, no. Forget the cost. It's exhausting to fly in there and out there, again, do a day's turnaround time. So at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the guy. That's exactly how we did it. And then the other video conference is the one in the middle where you have multiple screens, is where we try and have multiple offices. And then you can see those, and then if we can zoom in as one office is talking, it can jump up big and you can really zoom into the person's face. Or if they're showing a presentation, you'll put them on the one screen and the presentation on the other. We use that a lot. We put up our structures onto those. We discuss it in a global way about what a structure will do. We get input from the different offices. And then hopefully I can go and get and do some exercise. Because, as I'm getting older, one day I'll look like Jim if I ever keep as much hair as him. And my hair will be grey and so on like that, and I need to keep thin and keep alive. So I always try and get in a little bit of exercise at the end of the day. So that just gives you a quick snapshot of an idea of what we do. And then Fidelis, if you want to come up and just talk the guys through about how they can be effective and what they should. So Fidelis will talk to you. Fidelis is an associate director in our team. He will talk to you about what we call exceptional client service and the elements of it. This would be your chance to make some notes and just pick up 1, 2, 3, 4 things. These are the things that will make you impactful as a tax professional, a global tax professional.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Great. Okay, it's a problem when you're 6'8". It's gotta adjust everything. There we go. Okay, so as Mark said, my name is Fidelis Chouara. I'm an associate director in UI Tax. I understand that the break is shortly after my presentation, so I'm the guy between you and your muffins. Here's the deal. If you guys interact, we leave early. If you don't, it'll be a long presentation. How's that? Great. Okay. By show of hands, who's heard of Helen Keller? Oh, perfect. To those of you who haven't, she's one of my all-time favorite heroines. To those who don't know who she is, Helen Keller was a political activist, a champion for social justice, an author, lecturer, well-educated woman in the early 1900s, traveled the world, met many important and influential people throughout her travels, spoke many languages. As I said, she met a lot of important and influential people, but the sad irony was that she never actually got to see or hear these people speak because she was both deaf and blind. But she managed to achieve so much in her life despite these challenges. The background was she was born, normal baby, and then when she was about 19 months old, she got a bout of meningitis, and then she lost her hearing and her sight. Her parents panicked, as any parent would, because how do you look after a child with this sort of challenge, living in total darkness and total silence? How do you get them to do something? How do you get them to look after themselves? So they almost panicked, and shortly, they got to a point where they thought of sending her to an asylum, but upon recommendations, they spoke to people like Alexander Graham Bell, as you know, who invented the telephone, who referred them to a school for the blind and deaf. And there, the family met a young lady known as Anne Sullivan. So Anne Sullivan took on the task of becoming Helen Keller's companion and teacher. She set out to teach Helen Keller how to communicate because she made a decision not to feel sorry for her, because that she believed was the biggest disability Helen Keller had. Everyone around her had felt so sorry for her, so never allowed her to take care of herself, never allowed her to learn how to do things. So Anne made a lifetime commitment to teach Helen Keller how to communicate. Now it becomes very difficult to understand. And think about it. You are in darkness. You cannot see. You cannot hear. How do you know that this is a podium? How do you know that this is a microphone or an apple or water? How do you tell the other individual? It's almost inconceivable. They developed a communication mechanism through touch, because obviously sign language was not feasible. So they used sign language, but on the hand. So Anne would touch Helen Keller's hand and put a letter, L-O-V-E, that's love, W-A-T-R, that's water, and then put her hand in the water. And over time, Helen Keller started to appreciate and understand what was going on around her. That was phase one. She learned to communicate through touch. Then Anne made a commitment to teach Helen Keller how to talk. Now that sounded almost impossible. How did she do that? Through touching the throat, one could feel the vibration. So if you make a sound like a G, the vibration is quite distinct. Or a K, an M, you touch the lips, you can feel You touch the nostrils and you blow A or E or I or M as well. Long story short, by using those three areas in the face, Helen Keller imitated those and learned how to speak. She became a lecturer, a speaker, a deaf and can you imagine a deaf and blind a person speaking? Almost inconceivable, but that happened. Now, you're probably asking, what does that have to do with tax? Absolutely nothing. But it's important because in there is something called service. I don't know if the slides are showing there. Service. Anne was employed to provide a service to Helen Keller. She made an effort to understand what Helen Keller was going through. She made an effort to respond to what Helen Keller needed. She became insightful or got to understand the circumstances and the challenges that Helen Keller experienced on a day-to-day basis. Incidentally, Anne Sullivan herself was losing her sight. So she had insight into the world of the blind. She was able to stay connected to Helen Keller for 40 years that they lived together until Anne passed away. She remained connected to Helen Keller. Now that's what I believe is exceptional client service. You need to stay connected to your client. Understand what your client needs. You need to respond to those needs, and you need to be insightful into what the client is doing, what is happening in the industry and in their business. You get that right, you are well on your path to being a fantastic tax professional. I'm just going to use another example and ask, by show of hands, who owns a car? Okay. Of that group, who bought their own car? Oh, lovely. Okay. Yeah, at the risk of embarrassing you, ma'am, I'm sorry, I just want to know, what car do you drive? I mean, it might be embarrassing, you might be driving a Porsche, it's a Maserati, I don't know. So what do you drive, ma'am? Anyone? Yes? What do you Sorry? Hyundai. Why did you choose the Hyundai?
Because it's fuel efficient and it's
Fantastic. Great. Would you buy a Hyundai after this? Your next car?
no.
Dare I ask why?
Change. America just sticks to the same brand. We try.
Okay, so if your first brand was a Porsche, would you change? You wouldn't?
No.
Oh, okay. I rest my case. Now, brand is absolutely critical. It's absolutely important. When you get a brand, there are things that are attached to your brand that people align themselves to, and they stick to that brand. Now, if you think about it, you buy an Hyundai. If you had gone to a Toyota dealership or a Kia dealership and asked for a car with for X amount, you probably would have got the same specs. 4 wheels, 16-inch or whatever it is, steering wheel, maybe a sunroof for that same price. But what steers one from one brand to the other? It's because you've heard good things about this brand, or you've experienced good things from this brand. When you walked in the last time, the guys took time to understand what you really need. They didn't just sell you the first thing that came to their mind. They actually listened to your needs and responded to those needs. So it becomes important that as a brand, you fully understand what it is that your clients need and respond to that. Now, coming from the professional, or I suppose consulting industry, we have competition in this room. And if I was to ask my colleagues from the other firms, I mean, if we had the same trial balance, the same fixed asset register, and somebody asked us to churn out a tax computation, chances are it would be the same. If somebody gave us some facts, if there's a transaction happening and we're trying to take over this company, etc., do evaluation, blah, 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 give us an opinion, what are the implications, etc., etc., it would probably be the same, because the level of technical expertise is pretty much the same. There's an expectation that we should know pretty much the same thing. But then what stands one firm from the other? What stands one individual from the other? It is things, the softer things, such as exceptional client service. I'm going to run through this because you guys are actually interacting, so we're not going to spend too much time. I'm going to go to some of these slides that I believe are quite critical. Now, I mentioned the 3 pillars that we believe make up exceptional client service. So we talked about, if you look at the right-hand side, I think from your side, it's the left-hand side, connected. How do you stay connected to your client? You need to understand what is on your client's agenda. What is the client trying to do? Are they on a growth path? Because if they're growing, you want to make sure your conversation about growth. If they're downsizing for whatever reason, you don't come there and say, wow, I got this fantastic idea on how to grow, because you're losing your relevance. You have to serve the client the way they want to be served. As mundane as that sounds, you need to understand the individual you're dealing with. I have clients that detest the telephone. They prefer email. There are some clients who prefer to meet face to face. And you start learning those things as you move up your career. Soft skills that you need to develop as you go along. I mean, I kid you not, there is a CFO that I know who the only calls he makes are to his PA to call somebody else, because he just cannot do it himself. He wants you in his office, and then you can converse. That's the way he likes to be served, so you have to appreciate that. You get that right, you start to get more airtime from your clients. As an organization, we make use of our global network and introduce our high caliber people. You've heard countless times that you may not know it all, but surround yourself with people that know. There is always someone that knows something better than yourself. You need to identify those individuals. You will realize as you move up the ladder, or as you move up your corporate life, that you may start off as a jack of all trades and you start becoming a master of one. As you move up and become an international tax expert or an indirect tax expert, you may start to lose out on some of the other tax specialties. It's fine. There is somebody that is an expert in that. Just know who that person is and tap into that network. We're talking about responsive. That's the next pillar. You need to respond to your client's requests or your client's communication. Simple example, a client sends out a note to yourself. Hello, I need help with this complex computation. You get that note, you respond to it. As an organization, we respond within the same business day. Before close of business today, if you get an email at 10 to 5, if you leave at 5, you should respond to that email. That doesn't mean you have the answer, but you acknowledge receipt to your client. I got your email and I'll respond to you in the next week or two, or however long you think it will take. Because if you don't respond, the client is not sure whether you actually got his email or are interested at all, and they'll go to the competition. So you want to make sure that you stay relevant, stay connected, and respond to your client. Raise your visibility at the client. Obvious, you need to be there. You need to be talking to them on a regular basis. Seek and provide feedback. You know, good news is good, right? But bad news is probably the best news you can ever get, because it gives you an opportunity to fix whatever mistakes you've made. If you live in this bliss that all is fine, and you are making mistakes, one day it'll all blow up in your face. So look for that negative feedback. That CFO that you know doesn't like you, that walks away when you meet at the mall. You see this big guy jumping into a kid's store by himself. Like, why is he going in there? He's trying to avoid you. That's the guy you need to understand. What are his issues? Get feedback from that guy. Don't go to the guy that you go drinking with every day, because he's going to tell you what you want to hear, and you're losing out on that fantastic opportunity. Feedback is absolutely critical, and respond to those areas of improvement, obviously. How do we achieve this? And as you can see on the next block, they say it becomes personal. I need to do something. So I need to make that commitment that I am going to be responsive to my client's needs. How I do it, I need to make sure that I do it in a way that it becomes it is sustainable and obviously reasonable. We move on to what we call as insightful. Now, obviously, in the early stages of a career, you may not have an opportunity to be as insightful into what's happening in your client's business, in this industry, but this is absolutely critical. You need to know what is going on in your client's business. And I imagine you're providing service to Apple, and you go and you say, guys, whoa, you know what, guys, come here, let's talk. You know those R&D allowances for your iPhone 1? You need to make a plan. The guys are, whoa, you're on iPhone 5 now, dude, get out of here. What you're talking about is irrelevant, because you are not staying up to speed with what's going on in your client's business. Simplified example, what I'm trying to illustrate is that you need to know the changes happening in your business, so that in your client's business rather, so that when you present any solution, they are relevant. What is going on with the competition? Who's going into what markets? Who's going out of that market? Why is that happening? That insight you learn through reading, through asking. You learn from one client in a sector, share it with other clients in a sector. Obviously, making sure that you exercise confidentiality. You do not want to divulge too much, but it's just around some of the things that you may have picked up. Absolutely critical. always ask. Very important. As you move up the corporate, up your corporate life, make sure you ask questions. Do not be scared at all to make mistakes, because the sooner you make mistakes, the sooner you get them fixed, and they do not become a bigger issue as you move up the corporate ladder. Great. I think we're all on the right path, because I can see a lot of enthusiasm. That's great. Just the last slide I have here is just a summary of what exceptional life cycle, exceptional client service is. So it's basically just a shared commitment to providing unmatched client service, dynamic and comprehensive approach to being account-centric that focuses on relentlessly serving our clients. You can read the rest. An approach that builds on EY's approach to world-class account management. This is what exceptional client service is. Just an interesting story. So Jim, who you saw earlier, sent out an email to us about 3 weeks ago. And this email came from our German colleagues. And they were like, whoa, man, we've just won this multi-million-dollar contract on a pharmaceutical client. When the client was asked why they made the decision to go with our firm, pardon me if this sounds like a sales pitch, but I'm just trying to emphasize a point here. The client's response was, we awarded EY Africa a very small engagement, but they delivered such service that we felt we were in good hands. Exceptional client service. We're comfortable to work with this firm anywhere across the globe. Now, what you do will have an impact on yourself and may have an impact on a lot of people around you. So always bear that in mind. There is always a knock-on effect. If you succeed as a tax professional, you make the team around you succeed, and you will go up even higher. Thank you.